All right. Hello and welcome back, or welcome to my Ergo Proxy discussion slash review. This is the second part of the discussion, and we'll be tackling the themes and the themes in the mythology of the show. Um, if you saw the first part, uh, you'll recall that I mentioned the kind of uh, Paradise Gone Wrong theme to Ergo Proxy, the sort of future dystopia, like as evidence like in The Giver or 1984 Brave New World. Just a world that's perfect on the outside, but it has a lot wrong on the inside, and that's the world of Ergo Proxy. And Ramdo, the main city, the last bastion, so to speak, of humanity. Well, as far as we know, up until a certain point, the humans are grown in tubes. They're encouraged to consume, uh, produce, encouraged not to think, just to kind of get themselves up to Ramdo, kind of surrender to its will. And Ramdo is only one out of many different cities like this, many different domes. We discovered that there are different types of domes. That there's similar cities to Ramdo. There's also, what is it called? Smileland? Yeah, Smileland, which is like an amusement park. So not all the domes are necessarily just cities, but they're all created or exist for the purpose of cultivating humans. Uh, we discovered that each city is supervised essentially by a proxy, by some proxy, and we discovered that Ramdo, for example, was run originally by Ergo Proxy by Vincent. Um, each city has its own proxy. Smileland was Will Be Good. Cascus ran, I forget what the city was called, but he had his own city. His lover Synex had her own city. Each of the proxies had his own city. Monad, which you would in the beginning you're led to believe is the proxy for Ramdo, was actually the proxy for Mosque. And Donna Mayer attacked Mosque when Vincent left, or Ergo Proxy left, excuse me, as a means to take vengeance upon Monad for, being the object of Vincent's affections, for perhaps contributing to his failure, to his disappointment in the humans that he helped create. So yes, each proxy is responsible for cultivating human life or repairing the outside world. And we later discovered that the proxies were created by the original humans, I guess the real humans, if you want to get technical, who, when the world became a hellhole, left, in a giant spaceship, and they've kind of initiated this proxy project to restore the world, or help restore the world, help restore humanity. Um, so I'll get into that in a little bit in further detail, but that's basically the world of Ergo Proxy, and we get this kind of dystopic setting where nothing really went as planned. Um, that leads me into the next thing, which is humanization. Now, how does humanization relate to nothing going as planned? Well, the proxies were created by flawed creators. You know, it's sort of like the last episode, I guess, suggests, that, well, Vincent Law as a proxy, Ergo Proxy, was flawed, so therefore his creations were also flawed. So the proxies they're kind of revered as gods in a way by the people that they created, but the proxies are not gods. They have their own sets of insecurities, their own sets of qualms. They were abandoned by their own creators. So we kind of get that downward spiral of abuse. Like, the creator abused the created, so then the created will abuse whatever it creates, and that's what happens to the proxies. With the exception of Ergo, maybe not an exception. All the proxies basically go crazy, and they end up killing all the people in their dome. With maybe the exception of Monad, I guess, and Vincent. We find out that Cascus killed all the people. He used the auto reefs to massacre the people of his dome. Synex kills people. We don't know if Will Be Good and Smileline killed anyone, but the people died for whatever reason. And his kind of amusement park just kind of runs on its own, I guess. Or maybe people are alive. No, I'm not sure. Basically, things didn't turn out very well for it either. Um, the proxy who can assume the appearance of the others, the other people, of others. It's the first proxy that was not the first one. But anyway, the one that can assume the appearance of others basically says that it grew lonely, and it went just crazy. It wanted to be with other people, but it was rejected all the time, so it just killed everyone that it was responsible for. Dragged them down into the lake. The kind of brutal, kind of primal proxy that Vincent encounters when Riel finally catches up to him. The kind of overgrown city where it was responsible for. Like, we don't know what happened, but something didn't work out, and that city was ruined as well. So every proxy has its own kind of like soft story, or kind of a unfortunate tragedy that took place with it. And usually it's because they either went crazy or they were unable to protect the people that they were responsible for. Even Vincent, Ergo Proxy himself, who, while he didn't go crazy, he was so overwhelmed with despair or disappointment that he broke apart. He had a schism in his personality. Vincent Law producing the kind of antagonistic Ergo Proxy, which is the one thing about the show that I was never really quite sure about, because in the end, Vincent confronts Ergo Proxy, and it's like, well, how can there be two of them, right? And what I took from it is essentially that it was a schism, that Vincent, the original Ergo Proxy, was so overwhelmed that he split into two people. He's a proxy, I imagine that's possible. So you have Vincent, the Vincent who's kind of the kind Vincent, the human maybe component to him, and then the new Ergo Proxy who is filled with rage. Like what. He's angry. He's angry at his creators, the original humans, for having done this to him, for having implemented this type of program. Because the proxies were created, and once they fulfilled their purpose of restoring the world, they were just meant to die. They were meant to kill each other. So yeah, he's pissed, and his plan is to basically wreck Rondo, wreck the world, so that when the humans return, like, there's nothing left. Like, they'll pay for their mistakes. So all the proxies in their own way just went either crazy or were filled with rage, overcome by sorrow, things like that. And that is humanization. Emotions don't have to be good, they can be negative. And that's a way of developing a self-identity, a purpose, an identity. We see this with Vincent, finding out who he is, with the Otto Reeves being infected by the Cogito virus, developing self-awareness and sentience. That's humanization. With Riel warming up to those around her, becoming more comfortable with herself, with the world. I guess you could even go as far as to say Monad in the end, when Daedalus revives her as a clone, as a Riel clone, and that's Monad basically, and she's almost literally humanized. Still has her proxy powers, but we get this sense of just constant kind of development. The world itself is healing, becoming better, and alive again. And this theme of humanization, or I guess developing a more proper identity, is very clear, and it makes a lot of sense when you consider that everything in Ergo Proxy was created by something else. None of the life was really natural. It was all created either in the tubes. The proxies were created. The proxies then created the domes. They then created the people. And it was all based on a plan, And then these creations are left with that intrinsic question. Why was I created? What is my purpose and what is my fate? If I'm just a tool, and that's what the proxies deal with. So that's probably the main theme of the show, is humanization, self-awareness, discovering who you are, what you're meant for. And it's pretty powerful, it is the backbone of the show. It's basically everything that it's about. And The mythology of Ergo Proxy really is interesting because it takes a very kind of hard sci-fi bent. Um, we discover that the world, that this is the future world that could possibly be our world. We never discover why the world is the way it is. Suggestions are given that the humans found an alternative power source. It kind of blew up in their faces. When does it not in the case of humanity, right? And kind of left the world like a wasteland, and they left in a spaceship, and they left people behind. So it's not like a happy story, and we're really meant to take kind of our grievances against the original humans. Like they're responsible for this in a lot of ways. Um, at the end of the show, like they're returning back to Earth, and there were ships, and Vincent. We're kind of left wondering, like, will Vincent fight them, or will he sort of just assume responsibility and build a better world with their help? And we just don't know what'll happen. What else is there to talk about? There is, again, there's that kind of constant theme of like life is very hard. Like at the very end, when Monad and Vincent are just kind of floating in the air, and Monad's saying, "Come on, Vincent, you don't have to go back to that world," and Vincent says, "No, I have to. Life is hard, but I have people waiting for me. I have Real, I have etc." And I think Ergo Proxy, again, like I said, has the sensibilities in the right place. So you may come into it thinking it's a really dark series, or that's very bleak, and it isn't. That's the appearance of it, but it really isn't bleak at all. Characters die, and sometimes graphically, but it's not a violent or senseless show. There's a method to it, and the theme that it wants to encourage or advocate is a good one. It's warm, it's to face life, to embrace who you are, to discover what you want to do, to not be afraid. And I think the show is very effective at doing that. It's satisfying to watch. Well, and that, I guess that leads me to the final thing that I would talk about in terms of the themes and mythology, is that the show is based very heavily in, like, say, philosophy. I am not personally that well versed in philosophy. I don't really want to reproach it too much so, but that also contributes to a lot. So we have, there's a couple of episodes where Vincent is kind of going through this like this very existential crisis. He's Ergo Proxy, but he's also Vincent Law, and we get a lot of we get some glimpses into that kind of psychoanalysis again. It's reminiscent of Evangelion, where the characters are like, there's the me that's me, and then there's the me that's observed by other people, and it's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, yes, we have different versions of ourselves in other people's minds, so be it, fine, whatever. It's like I don't know why these anime series get so hung up on all the psychoanalysis and philosophy. Gets really heavy-handed. I'll get into that later on when in terms of my more proper review of the series and my final thoughts on it. But there you have it. That's pretty much Ergo Proxy in terms of its themes and mythology. Again, I didn't spend a lot of time on this, as relative to my other discussions. Yeah, it's just a straightforward series. I haven't seen it enough. I've only seen it twice. I haven't seen enough to really glean too much more than what I see. It's a lot more straightforward, a lot more kind of concrete. It's not as vague or cryptic as the other series, and I have to hold that as props to Ergo Proxy in terms of its storytelling. It's a better storyteller than, say, Evangelion. But on the flip side, there's less to talk about. There's less things being cryptic, less in terms of abstract and vague, less in terms of interpretation, and we're just kind of given the answers. But right, so okay, that's the end of this part of the discussion. The next one, gosh, I guess it'll be the end of the discussion. We'll discuss the pros and cons of the series, kind of a more critical analysis of it, and my final thoughts on Ergo Proxy. So thanks for listening up till now, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks.